Now to As I Remember story. As promised, it's one from one of our regular listeners and regular contributors. Good to hear from Alan Little of Levin. And Alan, although you're in Levin, your memories go back to Southland. They're called Athol Antics. That's a nice little piece of alliteration, isn't it? Athol is a small village in Northern Southland. It's about halfway between Lumsden and Kingston, at the foot of Lake Wakatipu. We lived there in the mid to late 1950s, and I remember the harsh chill of winter frosts, sledging on frozen hillsides with glee, learning pleasures that nature provides. Contrastingly, the sizzling summers were spent at the swimming hole in Eyre Creek, where we explored more than our own water competence. Growing up at Athol, you learned how to enjoy the simple things of life. An elderly man, Mr. Butson, lived next to our small soul-teacher school. He was the proud owner of a Burrell traction engine. I'll never forget how this kind man taught me to tend his engine, saying, "If you're going to get a good head of steam to work, you must start at the very beginning. Cleaning, cleaning, cleaning. Emptying the firebox ash, oiling moving parts, and filling the water tank to this mark." He taught me how steam engines work, and took me with him as his Burrell was set up with a thrashing mill harvesting farmers' oats. The fresh smell of threshed oats in the hot summer sun, combined with those of steam and smoke, mixed with the rhythmic noises of a working traction engine, have left with me an indelible and enduring memory. There must be many stories of growing up in the high country among simple things which gave kids pleasure. My father, Joe Little, was the foreman of the Eyre Creek Rabbit Board, and large farms in the district were well known to him. And he instilled in us two values: the land and all things on it are to be respected, and the other one, the outdoors is provided by nature to be enjoyed. And whenever he could, Dad tried to stimulate my interest in nature. One day he retrieved a giant dragonfly, explaining it was known as Urupetala karove, and is seen on hot summer days near bush streams or swamps. I recall this large creature captured the imagination of our small school. Its wingspan was larger than a man's outstretched hand. And my dog Nan and I spent many long hours walking tussock and matagari-covered hills or glens, where there was always something new at every turn: old mine shafts, rock caves. Our natural environment of air, land and water was rich in simple things many of us take for granted. My father and his men worked hard to clear the land of pests like rabbits and opossums, because they believed the land should be preserved for the enjoyment of future generations. He'd say to me, "Most human activities impact on nature's playground, and we must look after things." And I can remember lorries loaded with tons of Oakuni carrots at Rabbiter's Base, where my job was to help grind them into sacks, which were then taken to a top dressing plane and prepared as 1080 bait to be spread over inaccessible high country. Consignments of molasses and 44-gallon drums were delivered on the Kingston Flyer, and they were left at the Athol rail goods shed for Dad to pick up. The goods shed, amongst many sacks, drums and crates, was a favourite hideout for us local lads at various times, and some of us were not averse to commandeering a railway surfaceman's push-pull jigger to joyride up and down the track. Alas, the station, the shed and the track are long gone, as are the railway houses. At Athol we learnt to make our own fun, with a sprinkling of mischief just occasionally. Well, here's a true story. The Kingston Flyer used to come through twice a week, regular as clockwork. It happened that stories of the Lone Ranger and bandits of all sorts were in the imagination of many a lad. One day, a few of us hatched a plot and sort of acted out a story we'd heard on the wireless. With bows and arrows, cap guns, and lots of noise, we decided to hold up the Kingston Flyer, invoking, of course, the driver's anger. The young engineer on the day was none other than Russell Glendinning, now Russell Glendinning MBE, with whom I recalled the event years later. Russell told me it took him 7 years to learn his trade, and he's been with the Kingston Flyer since 1953, having become a first-class driver in 1964. But sadly, the railway line from Lumsden to Kingston was disestablished during the 1970s, and the crossing where we boys stopped the train is now just a hump in a country road.